So this is probably, if you've been into your Canvas course, does this look familiar? Something like this. You've built a couple modules. A module is a container that holds stuff. This is where you could build assignments, right? So you could just come down and in any given module, hit a plus. You've got a workspace and Canvas says, what do you want to add? And you can say, I want to add an assignment. And to make it extra complicated, Canvas says an assignment is a thing that students either type into like a text box or they upload. But you could also have a different type of graded activity called a quiz or a different type of graded activity called a discussion, right? So you can build any one and all of these things, a discussion, a quiz, or an assignment. And you can do that right on that home page where you put everything for your students, right in the modules. Again, you've got a module, you come over to the right, you hit a plus, and this is where you build assignments. For clarity on what an assignment is, just hang with me, we're gonna get there, okay? So here's what I've modeled to you so far. If we're starting from the beginning, if we wanna build a thing that we're gonna grade, we have two different ways to get there. We can go to the Assignments tab. This is an internal facing page, right? You can make this visible to students, but it's really for you, the developer. And this is where you build all the stuff that's in your class, okay? So then you could just add an assignment and build it here. Modules is the page where your students move through their course. You can also build your assignments here. And that's what I just showed you, right? So you have some options. It's personal preference. Either way works. So you build your thing. You either build it on this front page with modules, or you go to assignments and you build all your assignments, and then you add them to this page, right? And if you're like, how do I do that? I built it in assignments, but I don't know how to put it in my module. You can come over here and hit the plus. Again, this is where you could build the assignment, or if you've already built it on the assignment page, you don't have to build a new assignment. That's the top choice. You could come down and look at the assignments that you've already created on the Assignments tab and simply link one. And you could say, oh, here, I built it on the Assignments tab, but I want it to show in this module. Canvas, please put it there. And Canvas says, sure, here you go. And now your students can see that assignment to go in and work with it. Okay? So why do I give you this background information? Because where you're moving in Canvas makes a huge difference on the decisions you're making that ultimately show up in your gradebook. So if I were to just show you the gradebook, we would have to walk backwards to make sense. It's easier to walk forward to make sense. So you've built your assignment. You either built it in the Assignments tab or you built it here in Modules, okay? So we've got an assignment. We've published it. Our students have done something with it. Right? Hooray, they completed their quiz or they uploaded their essay or they completed a discussion forum, okay? While I'm building that assignment, that's where I'm gonna decide how that assignment works. So while I am building the quiz, better example, while I'm building the discussion forum, okay? That's where I get to decide, do I want that discussion forum to be out of 10 points or 30 points, right? In that individual assignment. And that's also where I say, okay, I want it to be 30 points, but you know what? I don't want it to show as 30 points on the gradebook. I want students to see it as a percentage. Okay? So if we're talking about what students see, that happens on the individual assignment level. When you build an assignment is where you tell Canvas, how do you want your students to see this score? Do you want them to see it as a letter grade? Do you want them to see it as points out of a whole? Do you want them to see it as a percentage? Each and every assignment you build is where you decide how they see that score. You following me so far? We good? Okay, yes, let's see head nodding. Let's hope, let's hope. Okay.
Questions yet?
Okay. All right. You're being troopers. You're hanging in there with me. So I built an assignment. When I'm building that assignment, when I decide how do I want my students to see their grade after I grade it, okay? The gradebook, this tab over here, is where I go to actually grade the thing. But the gradebook will only tabulate or, accumulate grades depending on how you set it up. So the other place we have to go is in that assignments tab to set our gradebook up, okay? And if you're like, set your gradebook up, if I build my assignments, isn't my gradebook set up? It really depends on what you do with your course. So Canvas allows you to create several different types of graded situations, right? We talked about that, discussions, quizzes, drop boxes. My experience is at assignments, right? So those are like the drop boxes where stuff can be uploaded, or a text box where students type into it, and discussion forums. Those are a bit more flexible. There's more things you can do with them. There's more ways you can make them work. Quizzes are the least flexible type of graded situation in Canvas. They're just more persnickety. They're really challenging to work with. You have to know exactly what you want and put in exactly the right content. I think because students take them separate, right? They kind of launch them and they go. And so they're just a little bit more particular to work with. So you've made your assignments, you've got them on that assignments tab, and then you want to start to think about, do I want the gradebook to do more than just add up total points? And this completely depends on your decision making as a professor and what's in your class and what you want to keep, okay? So here's what I mean. When I first started grading, and for many years, I just had my class organized so that it was one big bucket, right? My mathematics skills are relatively limited. So what did I do? I made my bucket out of 1,000 points, right? My class was out of 1,000 points, and it's one big bucket, which means that the stuff that has a higher point value influences the class more, right? So like a 300-point paper is 30% of the grade. You follow? You with me so far? Okay. So a big bucket, how you determine the points drives how important that assignment is. It's the easiest system to grade with on Canvas. Requires no additional work. You just build your assignments, and you know that if you make it worth more, it's going to have more influence. Okay. Let's say that in your syllabus, and you still want to do it this way, you've decided that, okay, it's out of total points, but I really want to kind of organize my stuff a little. It's still total points, but, I'm going to say that of that 1,000 points, 400 is quizzes and 600 is papers, and you've just made a couple categories for yourself, right? Nothing fancy is going on. You've just created some sort of mini buckets. They still all dump in together. Okay? You can also make this happen on Canvas. It doesn't change the way Canvas tabulates anything. It just changes how it's organized, right? How it looks. Okay. These two are really easy to do, really easy to look at, really easy to work with. The more complicated option is to make some separate buckets and then tell Canvas, no matter how many points I make this thing, I only want it to influence the grade up to this amount, right? So for example, you could have 3 different buckets, right? And then each bucket gets its own weight. So you could say, I'm gonna have 45 quizzes in this class. It seems like a lot, but here we go. I'm gonna have 45 quizzes in this class. Each quiz is worth 100 points. However, that entire bucket can only influence up to 20% of the grade. So this is more complicated, but it creates a system of weights and measures where you can add more influence to something without having to make it a particular amount of points to make it happen, right? So those are weighted categories. I walk you through this because this is the decision you'll have to make when you set up your gradebook. So to walk us back through our memory of what we do, grades is the tab we go to once everything's set up and we want to evaluate student work. Assignments is the navigation tab we go to as one of our opportunities to create assignments, but also the place where we tell Canvas how we want the gradebook to work for us. Canvas defaults to giving you one big bucket. That big bucket, if you've just opened up your Canvas class, is called assignments. I've been in here a couple times monkeying around showing folks stuff, so I don't have the tab that says assignments anymore, but let's rename this one. And then it'll be assignments. 1 second. So just imagine if you had just come into your class for the first time, you built a few assignments, but this is the first time you've gone to the assignments tab to think about your gradebook. You're just going to see this bucket that says assignments. Everything will go in there. And if you are doing that big bucket move where everything's out of however many points it is, and the stuff that's worth more points has more influence, poof, you're done. Nothing else you have to do to set up your gradebook. It's just good to go, okay? If you have a system where you want 2 different buckets, but it all ends up the same anyway, you're just sort of creating some categories, then you could make an additional bucket. You make an additional bucket, it's called a group in Canvas. You just push group, and it says, what do you want to name it? So maybe in this case, I want to name one quizzes, because when I look at my gradebook as a teacher, I want to see the quizzes separate from the papers, maybe. It still all adds the same. Things that are worth more points still create more influence on the class. It's just a visual preference for me. Okay. If I do that, I just push group. Okay. And then each bucket will be worth the same amount of influence on the class. Okay, so if I have 2 buckets, each bucket's going to give 50% influence. If I have 3 buckets, it's 33 point. Math teachers help me out, right? So there's no extra wheels or gears working. I'm just creating categories because it helps me as a teacher to see what I have. If I want those buckets to push the grade at different levels of influence, right? So I want one bucket, regardless of the points, to influence the grade more. That's the most complicated gradebook decision I can make. How I do that is over here on the right, under this third button called assignment settings. It's got 3 dots. That's where I go in and I make that decision, okay? So in this case, I have now 3 buckets. This one called assignments, this one called graded activities, and this one called quizzes. A cool thing that Canvas lets me do is, let's say I originally had 1 bucket and then I change my mind and I want multiple buckets. I can move stuff by choosing the 8 dots on the left, drag and drop it, and that instantly moves it to the other category. So I can look through and say, do I have any other quizzes? Nope, it looks like I only have 1. Okay, that's perfect for the example. Ooh, I didn't plan that, but it's working out. My cooking show is baking beautifully for you. Here we go. Okay, so I have these 3 different buckets. I want them to have different influence. So to make that choice, I'm going to come up to assignment settings. And then my top choice here is assignment groups weight. So I click that and it reflects whatever I've built. Remember, I've got 3 buckets. I got to use my math and make sure it ends up at 100%. Otherwise, I'm in rough shape, right? Canvas will let me know, but it's always good to double check. So let's say for whatever reason, let's say I teach in a field where there is a state mandated exam that they have to take, right? And it's a, you know, high importance, you know, maybe it's connected, like it's the pre-work they do before they're certified in something. So this one quiz, this one exam matters a whole lot to their prep, okay? So remember, I have 1 quiz. There's only 1 in there, but I need to show that that matters a whole lot. I'm not sure that that's the best decision in terms of student success to put a ton of emphasis on one assignment, but let's say that for whatever reason, that's what my needs are for this course, okay? So then what I can do is come in and say, no matter how many assignments we have, no matter how many points each assignment is, the total amount of influence the assignments bucket can have is 40%. The total amount of influence the graded activities can have is 20%. And that one lonely quiz that I made, 40%. Okay. So by using this weights and measures bucket system, I don't have to try and make the points add up. And I don't have to say that things worth more points have more influence. If that is of use to you, now you know how to do it. If you're like, one bucket is good, I completely support your decision. It is much easier. If that's already the way you're grading, you have a lot less to do. If I've created weighted categories, I will know that because I'll see that over here, 40%, 20%, 40%. I can, of course, always come back in and change my mind and say, you know what? I don't want those categories weighted. Unclick, save. Each one of these buckets carries the same percentage of weight because they all dump in together at the end. In my classes right now, I use weighted categories. This semester, based on what happened this semester, I took advantage of my college's opportunity to reconsider how I did my courses. And I changed my syllabus and I went in, and what originally had been 2 buckets, the papers were worth 60%, the minor assignments were worth 40%, I reversed it. And I said the minor assignments are worth 40% and the papers, the minor assignments are worth 60% and the papers are worth 40%, because I didn't want to put so much emphasis on those assignments given the additional strain of this semester. And the way that I made that change was by coming in just like this into assignment group weight and either taking it off if I want everything to weigh equally, or swapping things around, which I can do at any point. And look, if my math is bad, Canvas will say that only equals 90%, lady, where's your other 10%? And then you can figure that out. This is a great moment.
Question, Nick?
Yep.
Yes. A question about practice quizzes, whether or not they're added to the gradebook.
I don't know. I don't know what a practice quiz is. Like, I think you can set up a quiz to be graded or ungraded.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with quizzes to know if there's a function where you can label it practice and how that drives a gradebook choice. But that would be a great question for us to go on a discovery hunt together in like the thought partner session and look at how quizzes are created. I know that quizzes can be graded or ungraded.
So could you, following on that, could you show us how you could have an ungraded quiz?
Not in this session, nope, because this is not about building assignments. And if I take you down that road, we'll never get back. But if you
Very good, I get it.
Build quizzes. If you want to know how to build quizzes, please come to one of those virtual community thought partner sessions. Quizzes are tough. They are a lot of work to make them work well. And building it well does not mean it goes as you think it will for your students. So it's also worthwhile to come to one of those thought partner sessions. If you go with me, there may be a moment where I attempt to say, could you do this in a way that isn't a quiz for your own sanity and theirs? And sometimes the answer is no, it's gotta be a quiz. But there's a whole lot of ways to make an assignment happen that aren't a quiz that may save stress in the long run, depending on what you're doing. But let's talk more. Let's do it in that thought partner session, and we'll go through those quizzes one step at a time and figure out what would work best for you. So we've done all this work at looking how to build assignments. We've got our assignments. We've built some stuff. Let's go take a look at that gradebook. So again, I've been hanging out in assignment tab this whole time, setting up that gradebook. I see the assignments I already have. Now I'm going to go into the actual tab that says grades. And this is that moment to remind you this is a baking show. No, I don't just have one student. This is my fake course. It's called a sandbox. Whether you have a sandbox or not is completely a district or individual college decision. You can talk to your distance ed coordinator or department to know if that's an option for you. It's a prototype space, right? So I can build stuff in here presumably and then copy it over to my live courses. I don't really do that. I tend to build right within my courses and then just choose when I'm going to publish or copy stuff from previous semesters. But it's really helpful for all of you right now because we can do whatever we want in here and it doesn't impact any of my actual students who are living and existing and doing stuff right now, right? And it doesn't show you their information. So we meet all of the check boxes of a good thing, but it does look a little bit like a cooking show when we're in Gradebook, because in a real class like yours, right, you would have all of these student names running down here in this first column on the left, right? You wouldn't just have one student, you'd have however many you have. And then what you'd see is that you have all of these categories, and each one of these categories is a particular assignment that you've built. And so again, Canvas Gradebook sets it up so that student names are on the left, and then the assignments you build creep to the right, and then they just keep going for however many that you've built. When they end, you get to start to see some individual reporting on that student and their performance. So this is where weighted categories can become useful, and just having the buckets can be useful, right? If you just have one big bucket, then whatever that one big bucket is equals the same thing as your total, right? But if you've made a couple different categories, then that's the place where you can see, okay, of the, what's their total grade in this particular category? What's their total grade in this particular category? What's their total grade in this particular category? And then Canvas does the math to figure out that total percentage. So that shows up way on the right. All their stuff goes through the middle. You'll know that a student has submitted an assignment when you see an icon in that center of the box underneath where that assignment is for that particular student's name. You'll know when you've graded something because you'll see a score inside. And then you'll know when a student has not submitted something when there's just a dash, right? Nothing's been submitted here for this student. I am my own test student in this class, so you can see that I go through bursts of being super productive and then sometimes not so much, right? If you've set times when things are due, right? So you go through on your assignments and you say, this assignment is due by April 5th, and the student has not completed that assignment by that date, in what seem to be really, really, really muted colors, like you gotta lean in to see them, Canvas will highlight those for you as a way of color coding to say, oh, this student is late. Or excuse me, this one is, this student didn't submit. The due date has passed, the student didn't submit. Okay. If the due date has not yet passed, there's just a dash. So this is where we come in to interact and give feedback and grade stuff. So let's take a look at this assignment. Canvas tells me it's out of 15 points. I'm gonna click on the assignment itself for the first student. So this changed about 2 months ago. If you worked in Canvas Gradebook last semester and you haven't done much with it this semester, you might be like, wait, this looks really different. They did make some changes. In general, they're really nice changes. The one notable change is that you used to be able to just click up here on the top of the box to get into really interacting and grading. Now you got to come to the first assignment to do that, like the first submission to do that. So I'm going to click on this icon. I could just put a score in here. I'm not sure I would advocate for that. You don't know what they submitted to that Dropbox. They could have put in their grocery list. All right, you want to actually go look at that assignment to make a decision. But you could just add a score here. But if you want to know more before you give, it's going to rhyme, sorry, a score, then you want to click here on this arrow to the right. It's going to give you a little bit more information, right? It's going to tell you the assignment. It's going to invite you into this place called SpeedGrader, which is where you can actually see the assignment and deeply interact with it. We're going there in just one moment. It tells you the student's name. You could, if you wanted to, here put in a grade. And you can also colored code some status on here. I don't use this feature. I'm sure some people do. Like if you wanted to color code your gradebook and say, oh, this student was excused, it'll show up pale yellow. This student is missing the assignment, it'll show up pale red. So you can override whatever organizational system Canvas might be trying to do based on your due dates and change the color here. If they're excused or it's not late, I just make a note to myself down in the comments that shows up for me and the student. And I find that a whole lot easier than to try and remember which color means which and to stare close enough to see these colors. Like, it just doesn't really work for me, but it works for someone. So let's go in and look at this assignment. If you click into SpeedGrader, as an English teacher, I find that title hilarious. SpeedGrader is not a thing that actually ever happens, but I'm glad that it makes me feel speedy by its title. So here's where I would see the assignment. In this case, let's see, this is a discussion forum, and it looks like this student has not submitted to this discussion, right? We could go in and look at the assignment. I've opened it up in SpeedGrader. I can click here to view the full discussion, but it looks like this student has not put anything in here. So in this case, I'd probably grade this out of a 0, right? Don't mind my baking show here for a second. Give me 2 seconds. Okay. I come in, I can put a 0 here. This is also where I can add a new comment, right? So I might say something like, dear test student, I noticed that you did not respond to this forum this week. Our class community really benefits from your thoughts and the ways in which you further our learning as a group. You can still submit a post in the next 48 hours for partial credit, or whatever you might say to a student if you wanted to note that something is missing, but you wanted to open a space to give them additional chances. And that's completely at your discretion for what makes sense for you as an instructor, right? But I can post that in. They do not have to have put in anything for me to give an overall comment. Okay? I can give a comment on a space where there's nothing existing. I can also give that comment in a number of different ways. I could attach something, right? This middle button is wonderful. If you want to know more about these, come to the feedback session. This thing that looks like a trapezoid with the triangle in the middle is an audio comment feature. So this is a place where instead of typing this, I could make a brief recording of myself saying what I just put in there, you know, communicating that compassion through my voice, right? And I would do that by literally clicking the start record button. It'll do a countdown for me, and then I could say, dear student, oh, I see that you didn't put something in this week. Your post last week was really helpful for us to move this conversation forward. I'm hoping you're doing okay. We'd love to hear your thoughts this week as well. Would you please email me and let me know if there's something that you need help with, or go ahead and post to this forum in the next 48 hours to continue your thoughts and also get partial credit for this assignment. Take care, right? Finish 27 seconds, but it's that personal reach out. I can save it. And then that feedback's going to embed directly beneath where I would put in written comments. And if I want to get super fancy, I can come over to this last box, which looks like a speaker, choose the red record button. And as long as I speak a little slower than I was raised to do so in Detroit, then it will capture all of my words, put them here, and it's speech to talk, or talk to text. And so then I can audio record, it will turn it into text. Hooray. And then I can hit done. And since it clearly didn't recognize the word hooray and turned it into the word tray, before it goes in, I can edit it to make sure that it got me exactly correctly. Then I can hit submit. Ta-da! 3 different ways to give feedback on an assignment. 3 different ways to give feedback when they haven't even put in an assignment, right? So 3 different ways to connect with your student, all happening within the gradebook.
Question.
Yep.
Does Canvas allow the instructor to see how many times a student has come in to check their grade?
I don't know if it's to check their grade, but you can see activity. Thought Partner Hour is a great place for us to dig into that deeply. It's not a feature I use a lot, but you can. There's ways for you to have eyes on student activity. One thing you can see from Gradebook, I'm going to take us back to the Gradebook and show you this. So this icon on the far left is the Gradebook function. And so that's how I get back to the whole Gradebook. Because when you're in SpeedGrader, you're sort of three hallways down a tunnel. And then you got to back out one to go to the Gradebook. And then you got to back out one more to get to your entire course, right? So you just kind of get down a tunnel. You got to get back. But when I go and I look at a student, and I believe this still works the same way. We're on an adventure together right now. I'm going to go over to the right on the student. Let's see. If I click on their name, what happens? Aha, perfect. Okay. If I click on their name, here's what I can see. I can see that I can click in to know more about their grades. I can see the last 8 graded items. And I believe, and this is a baking show moment, I believe I can see their last login, right? I believe if I had multiple students in this class, Canvas would, over a series of multiple assignments, create an average activity, right? Sort of, here's all the students, here's the bell curve, where does this student fit on the bell curve? And they would tell you that, right? And I think that shows up right in this spot where it's like, how much, how active is this student in comparison to other students in this class, right? Are they highly active? Are they moderately active, or do they have low activity? So you can get into that right within this gradebook. Under view, is it under view and statuses? Hang on, we're on an adventure together. Let's see. Nope, that's not what I want. It might be under actions. Nope. Let's try here. Aha! Under gradebook, the first one with a caret, if you go into individual view, then you can look at a student more specifically. Okay, so you're in individual view, you choose your section. You can look by due date or by assignment. Let's go by assignment group and position. And then you got to choose your student. So here I'm going to choose this test student. And then you got to choose an assignment. And then I can see that that assignment is missing. I can come down here and see how they've done on all their groups, how they did on this particular assignment. And this is also where I can message students or curve grades. There is another place. I'm not sure exactly how to get there. We would have to look in that Thought Partner Hour, but there is another place where I can actually see, I don't know, it's like a data page where I can see the common activity and who's interacting with what page. I can drill down and look at that information if I want to. Personally, the only time I have to look at that is if I have a serious situation in a class where I see that maybe 2 students have submitted the same assignment, and I need to see when was it, what was the exact time it was submitted, what was the IP address. I can find out by talking to magic folks in the back, etc. I think I've done that twice in 5 years. So for the most part, I don't look at anything beyond what Canvas says their average activity is as the most guidance for what I might want to know. I've got time for a few more questions. What have we got?
I don't have questions. I don't see any unanswered questions other than the ones that you've directed folks to the Thought Partner session.
Let me bring a couple other things up that might get you into some questions. Okay. or just some general information that might be useful for you. Okay, so when you're giving feedback, right, the type of assignment you have that you build, the type of graded activity that you build drives how you can give feedback. Okay, so all types of graded assignments, you can enter a grade manually, right? You can give overall comments following the grade. But then quizzes, you can set up to auto grade, right? If you do true or false or whatever, you can set those up with points. If they get the right answer, it's worth 5 points, you know, etc. You can also set those up depending on how they answer the right answer or the wrong answer, that feedback pops up to them immediately to see, right? You can do that. And quizzes, yeah, give that instant feedback or auto grade. And then if you want to actually get into something they've uploaded, right, they type an essay for you and you want to like circle stuff in their essay or underline, that happens within SpeedGrader, but can only happen when students upload a file. So you would build an assignment type of graded activity with a Dropbox. You'd have them upload something. And specifically, it would either need to be a Microsoft Doc, a PDF you can give comments on the side, an RTF they can work with. Any other type of document that they might upload, you can't annotate on it, but you could put comments on it. More questions? Anything else come in?
Hey, we have several questions now.
Oh,
we
good.
got
Oh, good.
several. They keep coming in now. Is it? Yeah. So let's see where we start. Can students go back and quiz once it's submitted?
Can students go back and do what?
Can they see the quiz once it's submitted?
It depends on how you set it up. So within the quiz
Okay.
function, when you design the quiz and you go in and you build that in assignments, right? You get to decide how many times can they take it? Can they see their answers after they're done? Can they see their answers all the time or just once? You make all of those if-then decisions when you're building that quiz.
Okay, another question is there a way to record video comments or feedback to students instead of audio only?
Absolutely, it's in that same parallelogram with the triangle. So if you go in instead of audio recording, typically it will show your webcam and give you it will default to audio and video. The reason it didn't in our baking show situation is because I'm already using my webcam for this. But typically, if you're not doing a Zoom webinar at the same time that you're giving student comments, you'll get both. You'll get the audio and the video, and then you can turn the video off if you want to by right-clicking on the video and saying audio only. Yep. Advice that you, oh wait, just one more quick thing. Advice that you didn't ask for, but I would give you on that. Unless it's a really critical moment to put your face in that feedback comment, it's a ton of bandwidth. For you to do those recordings with video and for students to watch them with video. So for lecture videos or other weekly announcements or things where it's really helpful to see your face, by all means do that and maybe visit one of our screencast-o-matic sessions for how to do your face in relation to lecture videos or making messages to your students. For feedback on assignments, depending on where your students are and their internet bandwidth, by choosing video, they may not be able to get it at all. Audio takes a lot less bandwidth for them to get it. What else you got, Jan?
Okay, so we got tons of questions. Michael has been really persistent with this one. Thank you. How do you group best, say 3 out of 4 quizzes in the gradebook? So you have 4 quizzes and the students 3 that are actually instead of all 4.
So,
does that make sense?
It does. In other words, you're saying you're going to drop their lowest quiz score. Am I right?
Yeah, right.
You're going to drop their lowest quiz score. So the way that I don't know if there's a way to tell Canvas to drop a quiz score for one person. I don't know. What I would do is I'd make 4 and I'd give them points for the one that I drop, which is not the same thing as dropping one. Mathematically, they don't work out the same, right? But if I were doing it, that's what I would do is I'd take 4 and whatever one they wanted to drop, I would just give them 100% of the points on that one.
Okay. Another question quickly is,
yeah.
let's say you had a 12-point quiz and now you wanted to make it worth 200 points. Can you change the number of points once you've started the quiz?
That's a two-part, it depends. Okay. You can, not when it started. Nope, once a quiz is launched, it's forward, my friends. It has gone, the ship has sailed. As soon as people are taking it, you cannot do anything with it. The other thing is, if you're changing the points, that means you're going into each individual question and changing the points to change the total cumulative score. This is that, remember that slide early when I said quizzes are a real pain? Welcome. Welcome to that space. They're very hard. Like, make sure you want a quiz as the way to get to that learning, because it is a lot more work on your part to get them where you want them. And there is a higher likelihood that you're going to get emails from students who say this isn't working, or I did this, or it timed out. On top of which, quizzes, to my knowledge, are the most finicky with the app. So if your students are attempting to take a quiz on their phone, bad news. It's just really challenging. So just lots of thought spaces in the world of quizzes. Could you make that quiz paper and have them answer those questions and upload them? It's not the same, but it might save you some stress if every one of them isn't critical or time critical in the same way. What have I got? 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Oh dear. I need to say, just in case we don't get to your question, we have your question, we save the chat. That helps us build our FAQ. So
Correct.
you want to tell them about what we have on our site.
Okay, that sounded like Price is Right, which made me really excited. Tell them what we have today, Nick. So here's what we have. Let me tell you lots of places that I'm hoping that you'll go visit, that Jan's also going to put in the chat, so you can copy these links right out of the chat and have them available. And so the top one is our 3csn.org site, which is our overall website, and that's going to invite you into the next two URLs down as well, which is the Padlet site, which is a continually updating, crowdsourced, network-sourced resource of tips, tools, suggestions on just about anything that you can think of related to the learning and doing that we're doing right now as a network. So it's a great place to visit. And then the FAQ, as Jan said, continually being updated, that is built from the questions that we have. And then one more shout out, if you're not doing anything in 30 minutes, I will be here in the same virtual room again, and it will be that virtual community thought partner hour, and you can come and we will troubleshoot quizzes, we will troubleshoot whatever you want to look at Canvas related during that time. The last two links are actually to guides that Canvas has built, and these seem really relevant for this particular topic. The first one is, how do I import grades into my gradebook? So if I was using Excel before and I want those grades to come into my gradebook, how do I do that? It's a personal decision. Again, if you want to talk about that more, that thought partner session is a great place to do that, because you could also just make one, grade space in your gradebook that equals the total points of everything they did before, versus monkeying around with importing all those. So, we can kind of work through those decisions as makes best sense for your course. And then, how do I help my students see their feedback on all that awesome grading I've done and all that feedback? How do I make sure students are seeing it or interacting with it? Canvas has a guide for that too, to help walk you through, and you can upload it so that students know how to do it when they're in your course as well. Jan and I hope that this has been a busy but helpful session for you. We're so grateful that you're here with us and that you're asking questions and learning alongside us. Every time we do these, we learn new things together. Please come to additional sessions. Let us know how we can help. We have a website, an email website as well, called ask.3csn. You can also email us questions at ask.3csn. I think that takes us to time. Oh, 1 minute over. I should let you go.
Yes.
Other things to do. Have a wonderful day. And thanks so much for taking some time on your Thursday. And we'll see you later.
Bye-bye, everyone.